Welcome to Notes on a Painting. Notes on a Painting is a podcast by artist Olivia Kemp and art historian Esme Garlake. Together each week we will discuss a painting that one of us has chosen and researched. Our choices of painting will reflect where our tastes differ and overlap across the history of art.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, how are you?
Not bad. Not bad. Got a bit of a cold this week, so I'm gonna try and not get
Oh
too close to the
gosh.
mic.
Oh no. That's horrible. I guess it's that time of year.
Yeah, yeah,
For like
definitely.
months and months.
Yeah, it's that time of year until May.
Yeah. Yeah. So today I am bringing a small painting by an artist called Mansur, made in around 1612 in
Mhm.
India, and it is of a turkey. It's a opaque watercolor painting on paper. It's about 12 by 12 centimeters, well, 13 by 12 centimeters. And it's in the Victoria and Albert Museum collection in London. The sources were classically Wikipedia.
Classic.
A lot of looking up the Mughal emperors and the artists as well. The V&A website has some good basic stuff about the artwork and a video of a lecture from 2021 on YouTube by an art historian called Sugata Ray about this painting. But also in conjunction with that, there's um, an article called From New Spain to Mughal India, Rethinking Early Modern Animal Studies with a Turkey. And I will talk more about what that was.
I
And
love it when
it's
they're
very
like
useful.
the sources give away the like rabbit hole you went down.
Oh yeah. It's very interesting. So for me, this is like one of um the lecture by Sagata Ray was a really useful point of entry for me to thinking about images of animals in my own research.
Mm.
Um and he's very good at talking about this stuff. And even though this period and location is very different to my area, which is early 16th century Italy. Um, yeah, there's interesting stuff in this. So, would you like to describe
Yes.
it?
Um, so I can only assume it's a small sort of book page type
Yeah.
work because I mean usually these sorts of works are
Yes.
small on
The
paper.
miniature. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so it sort of has it's like a frame within a frame. It's kind of the central image is like off center, but framed with a thick gold surround of flowers, which is
Mhm.
really beautifully detailed. Lots of different types of flowers as well. And then it's got this off-center frame within it, which is green with gold flowers, and the turkey sits in that with all this kind of tile patterning around it, and again, flowers in color underneath the feet of the turkey. The turkey itself is like instantly recognizable because you know how sometimes you see animals in art history and they've been bred so differently over time, it's hard to recognize, what that animal is, and they look so, particularly dogs and some cattle. But the turkey is just, I mean, I literally drew one the other day. It looks exactly the same.
It is a turkey.
Yeah, they don't seem to change. So
Absolutely.
there's something kind of timeless about that little bit of the painting
Mm.
to me. Also because it's the colors are so bright, like the red and the blue on the turkey's face is really bright
Mm.
and the white is really vibrant as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's down to some really great conservation work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. Yeah, the turkey's kind of like the central focus, but again, like off center, which is really interesting.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's everything I have to
Thank you.
say.
Yeah, so it is a tricky one to describe in terms of the framing, 'cause, yeah, it's frame within frame. And I am actually mainly going to just be talking about the turkey bit of the painting,
Yeah.
um, because I'm not actually sure whether it's been like I think the frame closest around the turkey is also by Mansur or by created at the time. But I
Yeah.
also imagine that this, because it's a folio, it was then part of another album, and I'll talk a little bit about the provenance of it, or the collection it's been in. But these small miniatures were so often split up and repasted and given new frames and things like that. So I'm not actually sure which where the frame is, but
Yeah.
I'll focus mostly on the turkey. Um, First, though, as usual, I'll talk more about a bit more about Mansur himself and the artist, and just to ground him in the time and the court that he was working in of the Mughal Empire. So, Ustad Mansur was an Indian painter who's generally recognized as one of the greatest natural history painters of all time, although he did paint people in various manuscript illustrations. He was born, it's not known when he was born, but he's active from around 1590. I don't know if that's like when he was a young man. I imagine it probably was. He died in 1624.
Mm.
So yeah, there's really not much information about his early life or particularly where he was from. But some of his earliest works include the prefix Nakash, which indicates that he was from a family of an artistic profession.
Okay.
So that's a kind of clue. And Ustad is it means master, so it's like a title that he later earned. So I'll just call him Mansur, but that kind of Nakash prefix when he was younger and then later Ustad is an interesting show of his kind of status as he got older. So he worked, as I said, as a court artist in the Mughal court. First, he was working towards the end of the Emperor's Akbar's reign, who was the third Mughal emperor. And it was during this period that he earned the title Ustad as master. And he mainly worked as a colorist in an official chronicle of Akbar's reign called the Book of Akbar. But this was a book that would had lots of different artists working on it at the time. And actually his name I've written here is not his name is not included in the official list of artists. So I imagine there's a lot of challenges trying to figure out like which artist was responsible for which details
Yeah.
of this book, which reminds me a bit of like I guess these huge court workshops. It can be difficult to tell. So Akbar, the third emperor, reigned from 1556 until his death in 1605. So from the time Mansur was active in 1590, Akbar was a well-established emperor. And he is known as one of the greatest emperors in Indian history because of his campaign to expand and consolidate Mughal rule. Akbar extended the empire to control almost the entire Indian subcontinent north of the Godavari River. He introduced significant administrative reforms, and from this emerged a new ruling elite, which encouraged cultural developments and patronage. And trade also increased between Indian Mughal companies and European trading companies.
Mm.
So the Empire in this time became a strong and stable economy. And I think we've seen it in other kind of histories of empires getting stronger and more stable as you see the cultural patronage really flourish.
Yeah, we did an episode on a later work that was under, I think it was either his son or his grandson, and it was the very
Mm.
different, like spending all the money and not maintaining the empire and
Yeah, so
the
this is
story.
um uh Jahangir was the next one.
Hmm.
So it was probably him. So
Hmm.
he was the fourth emperor so when Akbar died in 1605, his son Jahangir became emperor and Mansur continued working for him. Um, and the way that I kind of was able to locate Ganjia was through his third son, who was the fifth emperor, and he was the one who commissioned the Taj Mahal. So
Mm.
I was like, oh, okay. Like that was
Cycle back from
The
there.
hard Taj Mahal. And I was like, oh, okay, so it was his dad was Ganjia. Um, and yet, like you say, Ganjia was much less successful than Akbar, than his father. So apparently he was addicted to opium and involved in court factions. Um, and although when I was reading about this, there was some debate over how Ganjia actually reigned. Like some say that he was rigidly secular. Others say that he engaged in conflicts with non-Muslim religious leaders. So, like, I'm not quite sure where the like religious part comes into this.
Mm.
Um, he was there was a notorious execution of the fifth Sikh guru called Guru Arjan, who was executed in the Mughal court in 1606. So that was around when Mansur was working. So yeah, I kind of like when I'm researching these courts of histories, I'm also aware that they're going to be so complicated, and the factions and the politics is something that you just know you're scraping the surface of.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, okay, rabbit hole slightly with the Sikh gurus, and then I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is amazing. Like, okay, but I need to focus on the turkey a bit. So I was like, okay. Um, so Mansur's role in all of this was with Jahangir writing his autobiography, he commissioned Mansur
Right.
and other court painters to paint miniatures to illustrate his writing. And Jahangir was very proud of his connoisseurship of art. And he said a quote, which I quite liked, was, "My liking for painting and my practice in judging it have arrived at such a point that when any work is brought before me, I say on the spur of the moment that it is the work of such and such a man." So he's really like, I'm amazing at telling art, and I'm like, good for him
There were no
because
attribution issues in his time.
no, he's very, which is interesting because it's like you can look at it, oh, he was addicted to opium and involved in these
Inviting and squabbles and
squabbles and everything, but also, that doesn't necessarily mean that his patronage was less
mm.
enthusiastic or, you know. Um, so importantly for this painting, Jahangir was also a naturalist and a collector of curiosities. And he had this project of recording natural phenomena. And he commissioned Mansur to paint at least 100 flowers from the Kashmir Valley during this period, and to make many miniature paintings of various animals which came into the Mughal court at this time, obviously including this turkey, which
Mm.
I'll talk about. But Mansur also was the earliest artist to paint the dodo in color, which is incredible when you think that, like at this time, dodos still existed and they could see them and they were
Yeah.
observed from life. So yeah. So the turkey, I find it, when I first saw this, I found it fascinating that the North American turkey was this really exotic bird
Mm.
in the court, obviously. But because it looks so familiar to us today, it can be hard to remember just how amazing
I
the
know, and we
arrival of
consider
the
it to be
turkey.
sort of quite ugly, I think, a lot of people.
Yeah, they are very strange birds, but they're also delightful, I think,
Mm.
and have such funny personalities with their wobbly faces. Um, so this particular turkey arrived in the Mughal court in 1612, which is when this miniature is dated to, around that time. Jahangir had asked his friend Mukarrab Khan, a high-ranking noble, to bring him any kind of rarities that he could find in the historic port city Cambay, which is in the modern state of Gujarat on the western coast of India.
Mm.
And so in 1612, Mukarrab brought Gahangia a range of exotic birds and animals, which caused a massive sensation in the court, and including this turkey. So in Gahangia's menagerie, there were apparently 100 lions. This is like overall 100 lions, 400 cheetahs, 6,000 Turkish horses, 12,000 elephants.
Where would
12,000.
you put 12,000 elephants?
I mean, it shows you, doesn't it? Like the wealth and extravagance of this court. 2,000 camels. And then there were other things like rare animals like zebras and giraffes and a dodo. Um, so I think it's interesting how also in the early modern period, like I find in the art history, um, a lot of art history conversations around Western art will be talking about this period with the exotic animals and trade and colonial endeavors and but it's a good reminder this painting that this trading was going on in so many other empires as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And again, the status of collecting exotic animals was not just limited by any means to Europe. Um, so so Gahangia recorded the arrival in his official memoirs, which was his autobiography that Mansur was involved in, called The Book of Gahangia, which was written in Persian. And the English translation is of this, and it's of this extract, which I think is interesting in terms of how Gahangia was wanting us to observe this turkey. It says, quote, one of these animals in body is larger than a peahen and smaller than a peacock. When it is in heat and displays itself, it spreads out its feathers like the peacock and dances about. Its beak and legs are like those of a cock. Its head and neck and the part under the throat are every shade, every minute of a different color. That's so weird. Every shade of a different color, I guess. When it is in heat, it's quite red. And one might say it has adorned itself with red coral. And after a while, it becomes white in the same places and looks like cotton. It sometimes looks like a turquoise color. Like a chameleon, it constantly changes color. I guess it's that red and blue that Mansour
yeah.
has captured and that brightness of the colors. So clearly Gahangia is interested in observing and recording these animals. But as Sagata Ray in his study of this painting, he's really interested in exploring like how people in the Mughal court and specifically the artist Mansur were challenged to represent and make sense of this new bird.
Mm.
So the painting itself of the turkey has often been interpreted as a symbol, and so art historians have thought about what does it symbolize. But Sagata Ray really wants us to think about this as a turkey that actually existed.
So
And
it's like a portrait of a turkey.
yeah, basically.
Mm.
But also, obviously, the challenge of representing something that you've just never seen before really also means that like that turkey by virtue of simply existing in that context in that reality of the Mughal court it actually then has this kind of ripple effect on representational methods like how Mansour was actually literally using his paint and his images so Sugata Ray kind of uses an example, a much earlier example, as a contrast. So, which helps me to understand this because I also think it's one of those things where, again, we're used to different visual languages
Yeah.
depending on, how we were raised and where we're from and all of this. So, I found it useful to compare this turkey with an earlier, painting by Mansur, which was made around 1590. Um, and it shows two pairs of birds, so a pair of grey francolins and a pair of Western tragopans. They're like kind of, they look like I guess a bird of prey kind of thing. And it shows the more conventional pictorial strategies that were used by court artists at the time. So this earlier painting shows the birds um, in their natural habitat. So they're on a hill with rocks and a tree and the sky. They're all depicted in this habitat. Whereas obviously in this painting, Mansur has represented the turkey in a really quite sparse environment. Like the turkey, if you actually look, is hovering in space, even though there is a little bit of ground, like you pointed out, of the details of the flowers and the vegetation at the bottom. The turkey's feet are actually just hovering. Um, and Sagata Ray really points out that that is an important detail. It's like an artist who doesn't quite know where to fit this bird into the visual repertoires that were already available. Like,
Yeah.
what is the habitat of this turkey, really?
Yeah. It sort of reminds me of that the famous painting of the kangaroo by George Stubbs.
Mm,
And he's doing it from a kangaroo skin, and the background's like an imagined Australia, and it's quite surreal. And it's
yeah,
got that like same unsure. Well, I mean, it's kind of a more confident like unsureness, but it's the same
yeah,
unsureness of like what situation to place this animal in.
yeah. And it's so it also this kind of decontextualization in a way of the turkey. It really, I think, heightens the observational
Mm,
elements of this. Like the actual turkey is really so carefully observed and it's
yeah.
minutely, the colors are meticulous. And I also really was struck by the tail, like the way that the tail is displayed open. So
Mm,
it's really showing like that description by Gahangia describing like when it's in heat and it opens its tail. It's like the display of the turkey is emphasized. Um, but yeah, I guess it's just a really fascinating like first point of contact between artist and animal.
mm,
Um, and it's I don't honestly I don't really see how it would like approaching it like that through the way that Ray approaches it. I am surprised that people have approached it as symbolically because it's so decontextualized. It's just
yeah, I don't.
yeah, like it
What would the symbolism be? I don't.
yeah. I mean, I guess it takes on a kind of I don't know. I guess maybe if it was in the book of Gahanjir, it could be like the the wealthy, like rich, basically how he's rich and I'm sure that was part of it, wasn't it? To include like
Yeah,
look at how many animals I have, but it's also clearly Gahanjir was interested in the like the curiosity of like this variety um and the connoisseurship as well
yeah,
of it. Um, so yeah, so Ray discusses like how this painting heralded a new style of depicting foreign animals in the Mughal workshop. Because this was kind of, I suppose, starting to, I guess it's like starting to think about like real observational elements. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit, in a way, I'm confused because it's decontextualized. Like the earlier ones are more observational in terms of like they're more clearly more familiar to the artist.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So the last miniature painting by Mansur was of a zebra, which was another gift to Jahangir around 1621. And when Jahangir died in 1627, it's thought that Mansur's career also ended around then.
Wow.
So he died, around 60. Well, he said I've written 1627, so I'm like, but I think the dates are kind of a bit blurred as well,
Yeah.
classically.
Classic.
Yeah. So yeah, about the provenance as well, which I mentioned at the beginning. The painting of the turkey was preserved in an album, probably it says probably when the floral borders were added. And then at an unknown date, the album was then dismembered and it became part of a group of folios that was bequeathed to the Victoria and Albert Museum in 1921 by Lady Wantage. And it's so, yeah, I mean, that even just that as like the life that this painting has had in terms of how it will have been passed through. Like the fact that it's in the Victoria and Albert Museum is like
Yeah, alarm bells.
classic. Like, yeah, it's alarm bells and Lady Wantage in 1921. I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it smells of colonialism.
Yeah,
Definitely.
for sure. But this painting does really make me like I love Mogul paintings and
Mm.
especially and like any kind of miniatures watercolor, like opaque watercolor. They're just so um the level of detail that can be achieved in these paintings is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's really was one that I thought as and at first contact and the animal. Yeah, I do really love it.
No,
Um,
it's a gorgeous little painting. And
yeah,
the miniatures are always like little like little jewels in
they
themselves.
are. Yeah, and the fact that they get separated and cut up and
Yeah.
lose it loses so much, I'm sure, of how they were first engaged with and
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you for joining us this week. We can never be 100% sure of the accuracy of historical events. However, the information we are providing is based on our own research. If there's a painting you'd like to hear us discuss, please let us know on social media. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe for weekly episodes.